While the Hunger Games books officially concluded with the release of Mockingjay in 2010, the hype around the Hunger Games continued to dominate into 2010s with the release of film adaptations that officially concluded in 2015. The Hunger Games was a juggernaut of a franchise and was very, say, prequel-esque. A lot of the most interesting events are only alluded to in the main storyline, so naturally fans wanted to see them explored. However, when the actual prequel was announced, everyone was disappointed, to say the least. We wanted Joanna's or Hamish's games, not a Snow villain origin story. Many dreaded the release of the prequel, fearing that it will go the same way a lot of media about such topics tend to. That is, give Coriolanus Snow a sub-story that would excuse his terrible deeds later. When the actual story came out, a lot of people were additionally disappointed since it was so much different than what we got in the original trilogy. Yet it seems like the story actually aged like fine wine. Once the original confusion settled down, it became abundantly clear that, in retrospect, we should have had more faith in Susan Collins, because Coriolanus' story is a masterclass in how to write a good villain origin story. Before we start, remember that if you like my content, like, subscribe and share, so that more people can see it. Make sure to click the notification button so that you never miss a new video. Coriolanus' story is far from being the only villain origin story or far from being the only protagonist to villain story, so what is it that makes his story particularly impactful? Having watched some protagonist to villain stories, I compared and contrasted some of them, and I came to a purely subjective conclusion that they work best if two seemingly contradictory things are fulfilled. 1. He didn't have to be like this. 2. He was always going to be like this. What the hell do I mean by that? In my opinion, a good villain protagonist will always have a fatal flaw that sits within him, but rather than to overcome this flaw, he chooses to indulge in it and embrace it every time he has a chance. The most well-known example of this is probably Breaking Bad. Since the beginning of the story, or even decades before the story actually starts, Walter White has a fatal flaw, that is his pride. Whenever his pride is wounded, he would act irrationally. This is the most apparent the moment he refuses Gretchen's and Elliot's money, even though it would solve all of his problems immediately, and instead decides to cook meth. Accepting what he sees as a handout would wound his pride. This singular decision is a direct contradiction to his mantra of "it's for the family." If it was truly for the family, his family would be above his pride. This one decision leads to a cascade of all other decisions, and every time Walt is faced with a choice to go back, pride gets the best of him. So, he didn't have to be like this, and also, he was always going to be like this. Because he chose to be like this every single time. It's the exact same with Coriolanus Snow, and with him, we have an additional component. The foreknowledge of what he is about to become the moment we open the book, which adds additional flavor to this entire story, and these components that I spoke of are amplified. Because, sure, the show is called Breaking Bad, and you probably read spoilers that he, breaks bad. But with Coriolanus, that foreknowledge is far stronger because you probably knew his final form first. This can be both a difficulty and an advantage when writing. While it might seem easy to write a story whose conclusion is already known to everyone, fact for the matter is, prequels are tricky to say the least. They have a way of either being amazing and loved by everyone, or utterly terrible and hated by everyone. On one hand, it's easy to write a prequel because you return to the world you already know, and you have at least part of the audience secured. But on the other, it's difficult to approach it, since we already know what happens later and those events cannot be changed or contradicted. You also need to come up with something new to not rehash old ideas from the original story. Thus, the best prequels are those who manage to not only provide explanations and context for later events, but also recontextualize them, make us see them from a completely different, more complex angle. The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes is close to perfect in this aspect. The impression I had when I opened it was, wow, this is so much different from the main series. and from what I expected, especially how the games look like. They are a far cry from the surgically perfect reality show-like spectacle of the main series. At first this feeling was difficult to get used to, but then a sort of appreciation appeared. Why would it be interesting if we were reading the same thing as in the original trilogy? We got a glimpse of how far the games have come and how chaotic and different they were at first. But that's a detour. Back to our villain protagonist. Once we open the book, we know that Coriolanus Snow is going to become a genocidal tyrant, responsible for countless atrocities. But when we actually do meet him, he is nothing like the Snow we meet in the trilogy, mainly because he is still a young, charming boy in love. Because of this, in spite of ourselves, some part of us hopes that maybe something may change him enough so that he chooses another path in life. We illogically hope that some twist will happen, and this will be an alternate reality where he does not become what he becomes. The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes capitalizes off of these feelings on basically every possible instance. He didn't have to be like this, but he was always going to be like this. I do firmly believe that the Coriolanus we meet in the first chapter of the prequel is the same person he is decades later. Like Walter White, the signs were always there. While Walt's fatal flaw is his pride, Corio's fatal flaw is his obsession with power and status. We already see how decades before the show started, Walt's pride influenced the trajectory of his life. With Coryo, we already see his obsession with power influence his behavior. At the start of the story, he is already a narcissist obsessed with power and status, but the crucial thing is, these traits of his have not yet been rooted in him, have not yet been carefully cultivated, and he has not yet fully embraced them. They are like seeds that have not yet grown. They're there, but did not emerge yet. His poor status does not allow him to fully act this personality out due to possible consequences, but at the same time, there is clear goodness in him and he has numerous redeeming qualities. He is not and has never been inherently evil and rotten, because no human being is. It's the choices we make that shape us. The way the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes is structured is that it is basically a series of tests for him to see if he is able to choose the right path or remain that narcissist obsessed with power and status. Coriolanus has many clear opportunities to change and grow, to choose the best part of him to surface on top, like Snow, and the mentor program is perhaps what allows him to explore this possibility the most. Coriolanus was led to believe that people in the districts are essentially animals, but his encounter with Lucy Gray and witnessing the games from another point of view than a spectator allows him to see their humanity. During the war, Coriolanus witnessed trauma, hunger and suffering, something that the districts also experience and still experience. He then sees the impoverished tributes, and rather than to empathize with them, he has even more contempt towards them and essentially treats Lucy Gray as his prized exception. Contrasted with him is Sejanus Plinth. He's foiled in every possible way, even down to the fact that Coryo is old money while Sejanus is new money. Sejanus did not grow up in capital, hence he is so much different than the native inhabitants. He is the only one openly resisting the games, he is the only one to see the humanity of the tributes. Coryo has an opportunity to see that Sejanus has a point, but looks away every single time, especially when he goes to retrieve him from the arena after he tries to honor the fallen Marcus. Every single time. Every time he has to make a choice to be a better person, a choice that is 100% within his reach. Every time he has a moral dilemma, every time he has to choose a right path, he always chooses wrong, and does so consciously. And it's all that more heartbreaking because we clearly see that he had opportunity after opportunity to be a better person. To choose to become a better person. To evolve and abandon his old ways. Sejanus is only one character that would allow Coriolanus to become better. The other is, of course, Lucy Gray Baird. The 10th Hunger Games introduced the mentorship program for the first time in its history. In the main timeline, it's the victors who are mentors, but in the prequel, the task is delegated to the top 24 graduates of the top school in Capital. The person who wins is guaranteed the Plinth Award, which Coriolanus desperately craves due to his family's impoverished status and his growing inability to hide it. But because he has the enmity of the Dean Casca Highbottom, he is assigned a female tribute from District 12, which is believed to be the absolute death of his ambitions. Until she begins to sing after being ripped as a tribute, which makes Capitol feel intrigued by her. From this point onward, Coryo decides to do everything in his power to make her live, because she is his bargaining chip to status and privilege, and very quickly he falls in love with her. Question is this genuine love, or a possessive obsession, yet another manifestation of his desire for control? Could a man such as Coriolanus Snow truly love someone? It's true that we cannot divorce Coriolanus' strong feelings for Lucy Gray from the fact that she is his bargaining chip towards what he wants the most, power and privilege. Hence he is extremely possessive of her, essentially treats her as an object, a trophy he puts on a pedestal. This has led some people to believe that Coriolanus never truly loved her, but I disagree with that assessment. First things first, I feel like the judgment of Coryo as unable to love is too much colored by what he becomes later. Kind of like people telling you can't thirst for the younger and extremely attractive version of him played by Tom Blyth, because in the future, Donald Sutherland version of him kills children and sexually traffics Finnick. It also takes this fairly common trope of villains being people completely devoid of emotion, feelings, and humanity. The Voldemort-esque, he is inherently unable to love because he's evil, point-blank period. This is a naive assessment for numerous reasons and presents an idealized version of love that does not really exist. I believe that giving a villain loved ones is more compelling from a storytelling perspective, and also for simple realism, because most evil people have loved ones, families, significant others, children. Villains who do not have those may easily come across as one-dimensional, and Coriolanus is anything but one-dimensional. In fact, it's the love he has for Lucy Gray that makes him such a complex character, and nobody ever denies that this love is possessive, but to deny that there is love in the first place is simply not right. Not all love is pure and redemptive. Often love is possessive and toxic, but it does not mean that, on the sole virtue of being toxic, it stops being love. And Coriolanus' love has a chance to develop into something less toxic and immature. But again, he chooses another option. He lets his paranoia get the better of him and starts shooting. Instead of letting this love make him a better person, he decides that love is a weakness he cannot let himself embrace ever again. The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes is such a good villain origin story because, in spite of being a prequel where the character's trajectory is known to the reader, to the very end we hope that Coriolanus makes another choice. But at the same time, we know full well that it's going to happen no matter what. He didn't have to be like this, but he was always going to be like this. Thanks for watching. Remember that if you like my content, like, subscribe and share, so that more people can see it. Make sure to click the notification button so that you never miss a new video.